So welcome to the Marketing Optimist Marketing Sandwich course. This is we were doing them once a month, but we seem to have accelerated over the last couple of weeks. I think this is our third one since we accelerated. And today I'm going to speak to Gemma Birbeck, who is a PR professional, and she works with us a lot, helping us out with all our PR. So all the PR that's gone out from Marketing Optimist all comes through Gemma, because we work with lots of specialists, and Gemma is our PR specialist. Gemma works independently on her own. Her company is called LeulyPPR. So she doesn't just work for us. She does her own work, and she does some really good stuff. And the point of today's webinar is to talk about how to keep top of mind during the current crisis. But actually, a lot of this is going to apply to just generally, just kind of keeping top of mind even when there is no crisis. So I guess over to you, Gemma, if you just want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about you.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. Lovely comments there. Just to reiterate, I'm glad to be a kind of a partner with Richard, because I really like his values and what he does. You know, it's a pleasure to promote some of his clients, because it kind of extends what they're already doing, which is great. So just add that in there. So I run Leuly Photography and PR. Not the photography so much, because it's quite difficult to take photos during isolation. I'm sure someone will figure that out at some point, but at the moment I haven't quite got around to that. So my company's been going 11 months. So just to kind of connect with you all on a level that we're all going through this together, you know, as a startup, that's a quite worrying time, but there are things that you can do to kind of keep going to come out the other side, which is what I'm going to talk about today. So first of all, I just want to kind of touch on the point about the instant kind of reaction for everyone seems to be to go silent. You know, marketing and PR is usually the first thing that takes a cut in terms of budget, and because of that, brands decide to go silent. Now the issue with that is that the message that gives out to your customers, both new and old customers. So what basically, if you are all of a sudden silent, what that signals to your customers and potential customers in the future is that your main goal is to bring in sales to the business, and you care more about the business than you do about helping them through their crisis. What they're really looking for at the moment is for you to demonstrate how you react during a crisis, how you would cope with issues, and they will most importantly be looking at how you can help them, which I'll go on to talk about how that should form your content over other things. I have seen quite a lot of brands that have decided to continue offering kind of, I'll do this for a discount. For example, there's quite a lot of clothing brands that have decided to offer 20% on orders. Now, the issue with that is that we look at the circumstances that the customers are going through at the moment. They're not going out. The last thing they're going to want to be purchasing is clothes. So offering a discount signals to your customers that actually you just want them to buy things rather than you don't want to offer a solution to them. So let's take that for an example of what we could do. If we think about the kind of things that everyone's doing at home right now is a lot of DIY, a lot of sorting out with their clothes. You know, they might be switching their bedrooms around. If you're a clothing brand, how can you reach that audience and appeal to them in a way that relates to what they're doing at the moment? So, for example, you might say how to reorganize your bedroom. You could put some content out about that. It could be that you decide to write a content piece about how to bring vintage clothes back. You know, it could be that you even start some kind of social media engagement about how have you found an old piece of clothing that you didn't realize you had during the thing. So it's relating to obviously what you do as a service, but it's more about the customer than you trying to think about the business as a whole. And just touching on that point, so I'm just going to share a screen with you right now. Bear with me, because this is my first webinar, so I do apologize.
No problem, don't worry about it. Just to kind of just while Gemma's bringing that screen up, just one of those things that I always talk to about with my clients, not necessarily on a PR, but on a kind of a social media and a marketing front. We never totally always pitch in sales. And so if we ever do a social media content plan, we never always only focus on the client, is what I'm trying to say. So we will put in content that is in and around the client's various areas, ensuring that we're looking at kind of relevant news for that client as well, that's related to them, but it's not necessarily driving sales to their brand. And that's because people get bored, even in times like this are exceptional, obviously. But if you are constantly selling, then people will turn off. So it makes a lot of sense to kind of be more reflective and be helpful. And by being helpful, your brand will be seen as an expert. People, even regardless of what the times are, people will always buy from experts, and that's kind of what you're after.
Yeah, definitely. Can you see this screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So this is actually an old blog, but what I just want to do is just kind of quickly run over kind of what these guys have done. So this is ASOS, which everybody knows, you know, we all know ASOS, we know you can get good quality clothing from there at a low cost price. Now, as we said earlier, people aren't going to want to purchase clothing at the moment. But I quite like this blog here. So it's about vintage clothing and fashion. Now, as we mentioned earlier, as people are sorting out, they're probably going to find clothing that they've not really worn in years and years. You know, some people might come across a wedding dress. I mean, one of my predictions for the future is that we'll actually see a shift in fashion trends because of this. So they've written a content piece here about, you know, the uses of vintage blogs and things. So if we're talking from a PR perspective, how we could translate this. So let's go to Google search. Can you all still see my screen?
Yep.
Say we're a clothing brand and we want to do some content on our website about vintage clothing. Simply go to Google. Let's look at news. I don't know if you've done this before. Is anybody familiar with looking at kind of the news section of this? Oh, you're all on mute, are you? So I'll just show you here. So the Metro, obviously, best tasty vintage clothing and electoral vinyl combo. So you can see here that what somebody's actually done, and it's quite current because journalists are talking about it, is they've then gone to talk about vintage clothing. I would see that as an opportunity to then pitch that into that client, into the journalist. Sometimes they list who it is here. If not, we have to look on our systems, which a lot of PRs will have, where they can contact journalists. So they've written an article about this, so then we would reference this and we would say, I've seen this, I've got a really interesting find about X amount of people have come across old vintage clothing and, you know, they might have found a piece that was from 20 years ago. And that's the way you would kind of pitch that in. So it's about looking at what journalists are already talking about, how that relates to your message, and then linking it back to what your customer is doing right now in this moment. And just touching on that point, one of the things I always talk to clients about is customer pain points. I'll just stop sharing that screen. So before all this crisis, your customer had a very different set of pain points as they do now. Everybody, well, the majority of people, unless they're a key worker, has moved from being in the office, you know, looking for business opportunities, looking to connect with people, looking to purchase services, to now being at home. Half of them are, more than half of them are now homeschooling their children, trying to run remotely their business. They've lost clients, they're experiencing financial difficulties. So what they're going to be looking for now is completely different. But that doesn't mean to say that you can't be of value to them. So one of the things I was working with a client the other day, so they're a construction client, and obviously at the moment a lot of construction sites have closed down. So we've had to think outside of the box in how we can still reach their target audience, but appeal to them in a different way, and looking at their situation and how we can get some brand exposure for them, but also be seen to be adding value to their target audience's life. So what we've actually developed is a competition for children. and we're using an image of a building that they've worked on previously, and we're setting this competition for your children to make anything using any materials, make this building in any way that they want in order to win a prize, and you know, give a description of why they've chosen those materials. So when we relate that back to the customer's message, sorry, the client's message, they always talk about how their material is kind of a bespoke material, it's high quality. So by getting people to talk about the materials that they've used within this competition, we're relating back to that person's message. So it's not directly their target audience, but the parents will be helping the children out with this project. That message is going to reinforce about the materials behind the project, and then they will automatically associate that with the client's messaging as well. So in terms of PR on that, so what that signals to the wider audience is that this client has been able to think outside of the box to develop something that is useful to its client, to its target audience. It's provided an opportunity for them to engage with their children and to keep their children occupied whilst they're trying to work from home. But it's also going to generate quite a lot of exposure. And one of the things with that is, because it's a competition, we will have to put the entry rules on their website, which means we'll have to generate a blog, so that when we're sending out the PR, we will then have to put in a link, which will link back to the customer's websites, and it's driving traffic to the website through the PR pieces, which is often referred to as link building. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that. So link building is a really good way to kind of build up, which Richard can touch on in a second, from an SEO point of view, if you want to take over on that point, Richard. And it's obviously generating traffic to your website, but for all the right reasons. Rather than trying to send out a PR piece saying that you know, you have the best materials in the world, you're the best construction company, please come and visit my website, which isn't going to generate coverage. You're providing a solution to the current situation and getting some return on investment in the same way. So if Richard, you want to talk upon the SEO point of view on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just gonna so yeah, absolutely, it's a really good point, and that's actually something that we've worked on with Gemma before. So we have a pest control client, and last year, when the wasps were coming out, and people get confused between wasps and bees. I know Martin's got bees, so Martin's aware of all this. So the pest control company don't want to remove bees, but people get confused between wasps and bees, and they get lots of call outs. So we arranged to connect with the Leeds Bee Association. I hope I've got that right. I think I'm going to go with the Leeds Bee Association. So myself and Gemma went to the park, whichever one, Temple Newson Park, which is where it is, and we actually went inside the apiary with all the bees swarming all around us, and in doing, the reason for doing this was to get some video footage. We interviewed, we got some footage inside. We interviewed the head beekeeper. We interviewed our client, and he put forward his point about not wanting to confuse bees and wasps, and that they could sort out wasps, but with any bees they would refer them to the beekeepers. So we put this together. We put a video on our website that kind of used all the content. We wrote a nice blog all about that, all about what we were doing. So we weren't selling the pest control service. We were highlighting their kind of standpoint on that. Working with Gemma, we put together a press release, and we got that out there, and we got it picked up by Country Life, which is quite a hefty magazine. Country Life ran the whole article pretty much word for word. Journalists are always a bit funny, so you'd never get it exactly word for word because they want to add their own spin. The beautiful part about it, though, was that we got a nice hefty backlink from Country Life, and it was not a no follow link. A lot of the time they'll put a no follow link, which basically means that Google doesn't pass the Google juice through effectively. However, they gave us a nice big link that went straight back to the pest control service, straight back to their content. So it's a nice deep link. It's relevant, and it's really strong. As Gemma said, it's really difficult if you're trying to link build, which is a really key point of SEO. Link building is from the first early really early stages of SEO when it first started, link building was key, but it's actually still a really important pillar. But link building is a really, really tough job. Sending out emails to random websites going, please will you link back to our white paper is really, really hard work. So combining PR with SEO and the marketing, the PR, and thinking it through and thinking it from a journalist point of view, and even take away journalists, think it from a user's point of view. If you've got a white paper that you want to that you think you've got that's strong, pitching that from your point of view, or the fact that it's just from the business and it's just about you selling, won't get people to link back. But if it's of some value, people will go, it's a really useful resource, that, and they are then more likely to link back. So this is where marketing, SEO, PR, social media all start to tie together. And when you can tie it together, you get almost like a perfect storm. So the sum of its parts becomes bigger than the kind of individual elements.
Yeah, and I think, you know, that's a really good point, is that PR, marketing should work together to get the kind of complete picture and ensure that you know, the message is the same across everything. I'm just going to move on to actually looking at what journalists want at the moment, because one of the things that we have to take into account at the moment is that journalists and you know, the journalism industry are experiencing the same issues that we are at the moment. I don't know if anybody follows, for example, the Yorkshire Post on Twitter or LinkedIn or Facebook even. So they're running a campaign at the moment because you know, they've had to furlough their staff because they've had 80% of ad costs cut, which is obviously affecting the way that they do things. So one of the things that is really important to note is that they're still looking for content, not just COVID related, but what their audience wants to read as well. And again, what I mentioned earlier is that what their audience wants to read at the moment has changed, just like what your audience wants to see at the moment has changed. So I'm just going to show you something which is available online. If you just bear with me a second. Share this screen with you. Can you all see this screen?
Not yet.
Now?
Well, there we go. It's coming up.
Okay. So this is a blog that's written by a company called Radioactive Public Relations. And again, just on this point, whilst we're here, one of the things I've noticed is that brands are not looking at competitors as competitors at the moment, which is why I'm quite happy to share this. You know, it is another public relations company, but we have to work together to get through this. And we'll touch on that a little bit later about how you could do that with your competitors. But for this point, we'll just stick to what this is. So basically, this is a blog about all the tweets that are on Twitter at the moment, if you can see these, about how journalists are desperate for content other than COVID. They still have a paper to fill at the moment, and there are some businesses that are still in practice that will be wanting to look for certain types of content. So, for example, Felicity here makes a really good point about she can't write a whole paper about coronavirus. You know, fun stuff especially, and this is really important because there's so much in the media at the moment that's quite negative, and everyone's kind of got this fear. They're all feeling a bit down. They're going through difficult life circumstances. They need something called escapism. You know, they need that bit of relaxed content that's going to just take their mind off it for a moment, which journalists have recognised and are desperate to put out. But a lot of people are kind of looking for that COVID angle and trying to do something called newsjacking. And actually, in the long run, that's not what you want to achieve, because again, going back to looking at what your customer needs right now, they just don't want to see you thinking about yourself to put something out COVID related just for the sake of it to get exposure for you. What they actually want is something that's going to help them, and escapism right now might be something that you can offer. So we'll go a little bit down now. Here, so find amazing people and their stories, providing you uplifting distractions and inspiration. So again, this is something that applies to after, when you're not in the crisis, and it's looking at your brand story. So for example, you might be let's talk about myself, for example. I don't do a lot of my PR at the moment because with me being such a startup, I'm kind of a one-man band with a couple of freelancers, and the most important thing is to focus on client work at the moment. As that grows, then my own PR will become kind of a bit more important, but the moment it's more client focused. So if I was to pitch in my story about, you know, kind of inspiration, it would be that I talk about kind of the business values, and my messaging is I started my career doing a degree in psychology. One of the reasons for that is that as a child, I suffered with an eating disorder, and one of the things that helped me get over that was, you know, doing the degree in psychology, which taught me a lot about how people behave, you know, what kind of things make them tick, the reason why behind things, which then led me to go into public relations. But because I was also a young mother, and a single mother at that, I had to do things a little differently. So I had to volunteer, I had to get freelance work, I had to work evenings, I had to do online courses. So I didn't kind of just fall into the PR job. And then after many years of doing that, I was headhunted by a company who asked me to kind of quit my job working at an agency and consult for them, which is what started my business 11 months ago. So anyway, not to kind of talk about myself, but just giving you an example is looking at that story and that inspiration and how you can kind of appeal to people at the moment that might be struggling, you know, giving them that little bit of kind of hope, which a lot of people want, is that yes, you know, everybody goes through challenging situations, but you know, it's temporary. You can come out of the other side. There are things that you can do, and reading feel good stories like that help other people to have that hope. So if you've got a story behind your business, or even a personal story, you can even talk about that now, pitch that in for a feature with the correct journalist that's talking about it. But also after this as well, you know, have that as part of your brand. Talk about that to journalists, because people want to read it. I don't know if you've read any of the kind of publications, especially some of the national ones, do things about kind of, you know, from McDonald's to Millionaire, and it's those inspiring stories that that people want to see. They want to know that you're real and that you're honest, and that they want to be able to see that they can relate to you. So that's kind of one way that you can kind of shine during this difficult time and beyond.
Yeah, I know. So some of the pieces that we've done with Gemma for our clients have been kind of in the spotlight. So I think lots of Yorkshire Post, you run a kind of in the spotlight thing where they actually don't really like you talking about the business at all. But what it is, it sets you up as a person, as a person. It's like what makes you tick, because they want to feature you, and actually by featuring you, they are mentioning the business, but they're not overtly going buy this shiny thing. And that's why a lot of press pictures that we get from our clients going, oh, can we get some PR about the fact we've got a new machine? It's like, well, but the fact you've got a new machine is not people aren't interested in that. There has to be a story behind it. There has to be something interesting. What's different about that, rather than it's just a new machine. So you have to think in that kind of way. And a lot of the way that works for PR is also the way that works for marketing and social media and other things, because it makes it more engaging. That's why, again, like I said before, that's why we don't encourage our clients to do sell, because there's no engagement in sell. It's kind of, well, what can we tell you that's interesting about me, about the whole business, and about the people who are surrounding it, our suppliers, what we do, what's interesting, what's something that you would never even imagine to know about our business. That translates into all marketing, because people are curious. If you're just sell, then people just turn off.
Yeah, and definitely. And I think, you know, one of the ways which I you know, me and Richard speak about it quite a lot, is that people will buy from people. And if you're the person that can help them out, if you're the person that can shine and really stand out and offer something of value to them, then they will more likely then come to buy from you. So, you know, and I always use this example, you know, whether or not anyone can relate to it or not, maybe perhaps you do this. I personally wouldn't, but think about at a networking meeting. Would you walk up to someone, shake the hand instantly and say, did you know I'm an award-winning PR agency, and my prices are competitive, and I've had XXXXX. What you would do is you would go up to them and say, hi, I'm Gemma, you know, nice to meet you. Tell me a little bit about yourself. You'd get into a general conversation. You talk about the event you're at. Have you been here before? And that's what you should keep at the top of the mind with everything that you're putting out to the public. Is it's about relationship building, whether that be with relationship building with journalists, whether that be with relationship building with competitors, whether that be relationship building with partners, you know, existing customers, new customers, whatever that be. It should always come down to kind of adding value. So Richard makes a very good point there. And I've lost my train of thought now, so I do apologise.
Not a problem. So I think we're time's cracking on a little bit. So I guess has anyone got any questions? Well, you want to unmute yourselves or put it in the comments, and we can answer and field any questions.
Richard, it's just it was more just a point that Gemma and yourself were making about people wanting to connect with you. The on-the-spot sort of PR that you and Gemma did for me at Wazoo, that was the highest engagement I think we got.
Excellent.
And it was nothing about Wazoo. It was about, you know, my kids and, you know, my pregnancy, my favourite book and all that. So yeah, completely agree.
Yeah, it was about the people behind the business, because ultimately people like people. So the information about behind the business can be a lot more initially engaging. Oh, right, she seems like a nice person. Oh, I get the personality. People are still buying from people, and then they go, okay, so I see you're a nice person, and we've got something in common. I know a little bit about you. Maybe then I'll approach you for some space in the office. Obviously, that's your ultimate goal, obviously. But if we'd gone out with a piece of PR going, we've got some new chairs in Wazoo, people were like, right, okay, and
have we got a little bit of time just to talk about what journalists are wanting at the moment, really quickly? Or
yeah, sure, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to quickly show you something that a lot of PRs will use, but there is an alternative if you don't have a PR. So I'm just going to share this with you.
Okay.
Okay. So this is something called Response Source, which basically journalists sign up to send out journal requests. Now, as you can see here at the moment, quite a lot of these are related to COVID, which obviously journalists do want to talk about at the moment. But we've got one here, for example, people are still wanting to know about, you know, people moves, you know, are people still hiring? People are looking for kind of predictions of what's going to happen in 2021 when we come out of this, valuable advice on how to adapt to the coronavirus, you know, online trends at the moment. So there's lots of things that they're talking about at the moment, and this is really key to getting some exposure during this crisis. I'll quickly move away from that because obviously this is a system that I pay for at the moment, but if you don't have that, what you can actually do is, I'll just go onto Twitter, and I did share a video about this other day, so do feel free to check it out on LinkedIn. You may or may not be familiar with this way.
I'm just looking at who that was on below the Twitter link then.
Yeah, might be a bit slow.
What was that, Richie?
Just while
sorry. Go on. Sorry, go on, Gemma.
I was just saying, just while we're waiting for this to load up, one of the best things you can do right now as well is use this time to connect with journalists and get your brand in front of them. So that just might be connecting with them on Twitter, following them, you know, finding out what they're talking about, you know, really taking note of what it is that they want, because one of the best things that that you can do is get journalists to come to you for content, which a couple of Richard's clients have. You know, we had one the other day, didn't we, Richard, that a journalist got in touch and said, can we have a comment on this, which is where the relationship you want to get to in the future. So on Twitter, there's something called journal request, which journalists use quite a lot. And it's just a simple hashtag. You don't need to pay for anything. You can just search it as you would normally on Twitter. So let's look at the top one, for example. Looking for someone from South or Southeast whose house move sale has fallen through due to coronavirus. Yes, it's coronavirus related, but for example, if you're an estate agent, you might get in touch with that journalist, not necessarily about that, but you might actually say, I could offer you some advice on this that actually I've helped a customer move during this time, or I've had X amount of people that have pulled out of sales because of coronavirus. So the journalist doesn't have to be relevant directly to you, but you automatically know what that journalist wants to write about. So you can you can see that there's lots on here at the moment. There's loads. I mean, they put them on all the time, as you can see. That was 14 minutes ago, 20 minutes ago, 31 minutes ago, and they use this every day during COVID and after COVID. So yeah, I would take that opportunity right now to be looking at these every day, seeing if there's anything that you can comment on, and put yourself out there. Don't worry if it's nothing that's, as I said, directly related to the service that you offer, but if it's something that you can even talk about that relates to your values, your messaging, or your story, your personal story, or you can offer a different perspective, then I'd definitely recommend to go forward for it.
One of the things, the key things that you can do on that as well, using the journal request there, which is really, really useful. I'd recommend you look for that. But one of the things you can do on that is you can add extra filters in Twitter that will filter things down a bit, so that you've not got that huge bombardment. It will actually, so you could add, I don't know, if you were doing real estate, you could add a real estate edition to that search, and that would filter out anyone who wasn't mentioning real estate, and that would clear it up for you, so that you're not having to wade through lots of stuff that's not relevant to you, for example. Because in Twitter it will keep coming all the time, and it can be kind of, okay, so I've scrolled through 5 screens and I can't find anything, I'm now going to give up. But yeah, by using additional filters in Twitter with a journal request and an additional filter, you can filter by region, by all sorts of different things to clean that up a little bit.
Yeah, I think as well, if you don't want to use the journal request button, you can simply just go to Google, put your services in the Google bar and look at news, see what they're talking about at the moment. What a journalist writing about that relates to your industry. Have a look at the link. Sometimes what you'll find is that journalists put their email addresses on their Twitter profile. So if you look at the article, see who's written it, go to connect with them on Twitter, you'll find their email address straight away. Reach out to them if you've got some value to offer on the back of a story, and reference that you've done your research. So you might start it with, I've seen this article here, I've got a really interesting perspective that I can offer. And then remember, in this current situation to relate it back to what your customer is experiencing right now. And by doing that, you will keep your brand top of mind, because customers will see that what you care about right now is helping them over promoting yourself. And that's one of the things that I always say to clients to keep in mind at the moment.
Cool. Okay, so does anyone have any questions, anything they'd like to ask myself or Gemma? Martin's always got a question. Not today. All right.
I was letting it all wash over me. Though. My
Okay.
question avoided, which is, what did you spot on Gemma's Twitter?
Oh,
It was interesting.
It was just a little image when she was Googling for Twitter, because it obviously shows up weird people on Twitter. And some of those people, like Kardashians and stuff, I have no idea who they are. So I was like, well,
there's nothing like a screen share to get people's attention, especially when an email or an instant message pops in. I was thinking, when you were talking, Gemma, about, you used a phrase which I found interesting, and I overthink things far too much. You said something along the lines of, you appear to be doing something, and I think what I've found is going back, what I've used the time for specifically is getting back to like some key messages and sticking to the stuff that I know I do right at the center and tightening up. And I think there's an authenticity about that, but I've never been that great, as Richie knows, on the kind of selling or commercial side anyway. I do kind of the stuff that I know I love. And I think that phrase, appearing to do something, it always grates with me a little bit, because is it suggesting you're doing something for the right reasons, or you're appearing to do it, or you can do both at the same time? And is that a tension that you have to kind of deal with? Is that too? It's probably a bit subtle, that point. Apologies.
I think you're right. Authenticity is really important. So if I suddenly came out with something about COVID at the moment, which everyone seems to be doing, well, really, how does that relate to what I do? I'm no expert in COVID, so I'm purposely not talking about COVID whatsoever. But I will put things out that are kind of touch upon it in a way of, okay, so I guess like these webinars that I'm running, these are kind of aimed to help people through the COVID issue. To kind of, this one's obviously keeping yourself top of mind, and the others have been about getting jobs. And we've got one with Russell on Monday, just to pitch on Russell's on Monday about resilience. And my reason for doing these webinars is to keep me top of mind. That's why I'm doing it. But I'm not going out going, I'm not going to run a webinar on I found a cure for COVID or 600 ways to wash your hands. It's not right. I can't suddenly shoehorn my brand into something about the COVID crisis. It's just not going to be authentic. It's not going to wash. People are going to go, what you on about, Richard? You're a marketer, not a COVID expert.
And I don't think things are always 100% one or zero or one or the other. It's just when I look at my LinkedIn feed, there's almost a crowd element to it, all funneling towards the same thing, being really explicitly linked to the virus. And I think my natural and human reaction to that is more, if I had to jump one way or the other, is to actually do what Gemma said earlier. It's probably the jump back a little bit, but get back to key core values and keep kind of getting better at them, knowing that there'll be a time to start linking them back up to businesses rather than run towards this thing. And I don't think it's right or wrong or one or zero. I think there's like a spectrum. And when I'm reading the feeds, I'm pulling faces sometimes thinking that just feels a little bit like opportunistic or a little bit just crosses the line slightly. And I pull a face when I see that, and I kind of move on.
I think there's a lot of that going on, but I think I'm putting it down to people are still in shock a little bit, and it's kind of top of mind for everybody in your personal life and everything. So people just start relating everything to COVID, but you kind of need to take a bit of a step back. I mean, I posted a little bit about it every now and again, but I try purposely not to think of it. Obviously, it's on everybody's mind constantly at the minute, but unless your brand is doing anything in that sphere. So if you're working with the NHS and you're helping people, whatever you're doing helps people with helping tackle the COVID thing, I think that's, if you are doing that, then that's great, and you should be talking about that. None of my clients and I'm not doing anything to do with COVID, so why on earth should I chip in with it? It's not relevant, and I'm going to be better served sticking to what I know.
Just on that point and relating to what you said, Martin, I think from my perspective is that we have to be mindful not to completely ignore it. You know, as a brand, you should be seen to acknowledge it. You know, otherwise it looks kind of incentive. But that doesn't mean to say that go out to say, you know, like Richard said earlier, I've got a cure for COVID. That again goes back to looking at your values, looking at your services, what you believe, what you do from day to day that can offer value to people in relation to the COVID crisis. So, you know, for example, like yourself, I know you do a lot about kind of team engagement. You know, a lot of people look at their situation at the moment. They will have gone to remote working and not have a clue, some of them, about how to manage a team and, you know, organise their goals, understand the end message that they want to get across. So that might be a challenge for everyone, where you could offer value, and you're not necessarily jumping on the back of COVID. You've got that experience that you can offer to people of how to engage your team.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's that kind of thing where I mean, you know, appear to be helping people. I don't mean to say appear to be doing something directly to you know, help cure COVID. It's about helping people.
Hi, Natasha. Sorry, Natasha's just saying she's got to go.
Yeah, no, that's fine. No, I get that. That's fine. It was less of a question, more of a ponderance when we worked through, and kind of my face pulling when I look at my stream. I think there's a crowd. I've got the wrong word here. Crowdedness is not the right word. Crowded streams full of very similar material, and I get that pulling back. I certainly understood the point you made about pulling back, and I think there's a bit about like doing some deep work as in away from the streams. I think that's certainly working for me, to just pull away and work on something that means you don't have to be visible, which I guess is not the point of this webinar, but it's about balance, right? And that's just what I was thinking, so I thought I'd share it.
Okay, no, thank you, Martin.
On that point as well, you know, you make a really good point. So about trending topics, which a lot of people jump on the back of normally. So one of them was banana bread. Banana bread recipes became a massive trending topic. Everyone seemed to be kind of, you know, cooking that at home. But talking about what we were talking about earlier, it's about going beyond that. So it is a trending topic which you can provide value on. But what somebody then did is an alternative if you don't have the ingredients to make banana bread using the usual recipe. So they thought outside the box about how they could utilize a trending topic but add something different so they stood out. And I think that goes back to your point about, you know, crowdedness. If everybody just jumps on talking about it, your message is going to get lost.
Yeah.
What do you have that's different, a different perspective to help you stand out above the crowd?
Okay, so we're on 1:15 now, so I think we've triangled on a little bit longer. We have to. I think Emma, no, it's all right. And Emma's just thanks for hanging around, Emma. Emma's got to go. She's going to do some serious brainstorming, so that's good. That's good. So everyone who's on, has anyone got any final questions they want to ask? Simon, Russell, Sophie?
I'm fine.
No?
Thanks. Been really
cool.
useful.
Excellent. Cool. All right then. Well, thank you very much, everybody. I've been recording this, so once I've got the Zoom recorded, I will get it up on YouTube and I'll share it out, so you can all relive it. And what on earth's that? Oh, you've got banana bread behind you, Martin. Martin's quick on the draw on this. There you go. That's agile for you, Martin, for definite.
Always like to add value. I'm not sure if has that actually worked. Is that what people mean?
Yeah, I've got banana bread behind you here on your green screen.
Yeah, nicely literal, that one.
Yeah.
Well, you just put the banana, you stick the bananas in the bread,
the bread, yeah. That's how it works. That's how I always cook mine. Absolutely.
You try that, Martin, and let us know what you think.
Oh well, the kids will love that. It's got sugar in it. Oh, is it? Maybe it's...
All right, guys. So the next webinar is with Russell on Monday. Hopefully, some people will tune into that, and we'll see you all then.
A whistle-stop tour of resilience. Just
cool.
You know,
looking forward to it. Looking forward to it. All right, guys. Have a nice weekend, everybody. See you later,
everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye.